Welcome to this episode of the Cold Start Corner. I'm Eric Matei, joined by a very special guest in Kayla Ashlee. Kayla is the founder of Spexy, which is an online education portal for doctors and their teams to become better, have more thriving, profitable practices. Kayla, thank you so much for joining us here at the Cold Start Corner.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about what we've been doing with Cold Starts lately. So I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, look, we are so stoked to have you here to talk about a topic that is vitally important and a topic that is totally the wheelhouse in the world of Spexy, and that is training the rockstar team for your practice. So Kayla, thank you again for joining us. I know we've got a lot of really great things to get into. So, our mission here is all about education and empowerment. So share with us, take us from the very beginning. Put ourselves in the shoes of our viewer out there that's looking to launch their cold start, and they're thinking to themselves, wow, how am I going to attract really great people and get them all on the same page? So, what are some important things that they're going to want to be sure they're doing in structuring their cold start and getting their team aligned and trained?
Well, the first thing is y'all are doing a good job because you're already finding a good resource in the Cold Start Corner. So that's great. Because what happens a lot with cold starts is they come in with these great ideas of, you know what, we're going to do this in our practice and we're going to do this in our practice. And they're so stoked and, they get this beautiful building and do all these awesome things. And then it come to find out every, new startup about 5 years later, they're like, oh my gosh, if only I knew what I know now 5 years ago. Right. So
Yes.
what's happening, what I love about all the great content that you're putting out for all these cold starts is, we're able to provide a lot of information to kind of bypass some of the mistakes that a lot of offices make when they come into, their new cold start. And so I'm really, really excited about, some of the content that you've been providing and, some of the things that we can help out with too with Spexy. So.
Awesome. Excellent. Likewise, Kayla. Likewise. Okay. So on that note, that cold start that you just mentioned, again, there's a lot of things going on as they're looking to go through the planning, development, and launch of their practice. Now, specifically from a team training standpoint, I mean, where does it all start, right? Like you got to kind of start somewhere with this. So where does it all start as far as getting your team on the same page?
Yeah. So finding the right team is always, the biggest to do. Like, oh my gosh, I found the right people. And once you've got the right people there, sometimes just the hustle and bustle of the day to day, you end up losing some really good people. And so the best way that we have found to really help cold starts get a good, thing going is, the importance of an office manual is really, really important to set the precedence of what your team is expected to do. And, what happens if they don't do those things? What happens if they do those things?
Sure.
Another important
Yes.
thing is performance reviews. At Spexy, we encourage quarterly performance reviews for everybody on the team. So they know, hey, if you continue down this path, you are going to be able to achieve, this dollar amount. Rather than what we call serving time. I put in a year, do I get a raise? No, you have to be able to set up your performances and set up the pay to reflect that, and your team will really appreciate that. And I think a lot of times, just again in the hustle and bustle of the day-to-day in opticals, that's something that gets tossed away, and a lot of times you lose good people that you found. And so then another thing, my third thing that's a really big thing is training, and that's what we're really big. Yes, training is so vitally important.
And I'm so excited for you to share some of that. And I know particularly get into like departmental training and stuff like that and weekly team meetings. Before we jump into that, I do want to go back to what you mentioned about the procedures manual, right? And let's talk a little bit more. If you could like shed a little bit more light on that. And mind you, to our viewers out there, understand your procedures manual is different from your employee handbook or your code of conduct, right? Your employee handbook and code of conduct are going to live more in this HR compliance world, whereas procedures manual is going to be more operational implementation. So, Kayla, if you can kind of speak a little bit to what do you believe are kind of some of these key pieces that every doctor should include in their procedures manual?
Oh my goodness. A procedures manual is so important because it needs to have all of these different dynamics. And for me to just start listing some off, whew, That would be a lot, because that's why it's so vitally important, because if you get a good foundational procedures manual, you have the opportunity to, not miss out on these things and go, oh, dang, we need to add that in the manual.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And
So things
totally.
like, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think the classic example there, and you mentioned it earlier, when you mentioned like you may have like a rock star key employee that is no longer part of the practice, but somehow they were the one that, the procedure manual was in their head, right? Whenever you had the new hire, oh,
Yeah.
they'll train them, what have you. And if you don't have that stuff documented or organized in a way, then
Yes.
you've limited your practice, right? So
Right. One of the biggest things that I think that's lost in a procedures manual, and this is, I think, what you're alluding to, is the training procedure. The training procedure is really important because that's something that's there. But a lot of times people, put in their procedures of how we, open the store, how we close out the end of the day, when there's downtime, when there's this, when there's that. But a lot of the big things that are missed do have to do with training. And you don't want, that key employee gone or sick, or, out on maternity leave, and then you're like, oh, we don't know how to train people, we don't know how she did it. So having that
sure.
documented is vitally important. So yeah, that is one of the biggest areas that are often missed in procedures manuals, but there are so many procedures that need to be documented. Totally.
Absolutely. Okay, so we touched on procedures manual, and then there was another key piece you said there, which had to do with kind of I suppose the development plan, right? Like you were talking about, you recommend quarterly employee reviews with every member of
Yes.
the team.
Yes.
Quarterly reviews. So speak a little bit more based on that. I know you've got a lot of experience in optical and in practice
Yes.
management administration prior to Spexy. So please maybe share your perspective on what makes for the great development plan, meeting with the team regularly, helping make people better.
Yeah, so I started in independent opticals over about 16 years now, actually, 16 years ago. And I started out front desk, quickly moved to the optical, got trained up as an optician. And when I was working as the optician, I was so frustrated because there were other opticians there who, had what I had done, what I call time served, right? had been there for years and years and years, and they're getting these small little incremental raises every year for their time served, right? And
Sure.
here I am, a huge performer. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make all this stuff happen. And when do I get a raise? And the doctor's like, that's great. That's so great. We'll talk about it in a year. And I'm like, that ain't good enough for me.
Sure.
So what was interesting is I thought, when I become a manager and when I start running opticals, because I knew that was, I already felt the fire flowing for optical love then. When I start doing that, I'm going to make sure that I do reviews all the time with my team. And I had the best intentions to. But then a few years later, I started working in opticals, as far as being a manager of multiple opticals. That good intention falls to the wayside with the busyness of day-to-day and optical life. So after a few trial and errors of like, oh, it's Sarah's day. Oh, now it's Mary's day. Oh, now it was just too chaotic. What I found that works really, really well, and we've implemented this with a lot of our Spexy membership, is that we really like to encourage quarterly meetings. And so what happens is that, let's say on a Friday morning, you shut down the office for 2-3 hours and you are going to knock out the entire team's reviews for that quarter. So it's so great because you just knock out everyone all at the same time. Choo, 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 choo. So everyone knows it's coming. Everyone knows where their thing is. And on our quarterly reviews, what we teach is that on their annual is when you really, look at it. That's usually a little bit longer meeting, but it all happens on the same day. So it might be their annual meeting, it might be their quarterly meeting, but all the team makes it happen all at the same time. And it really holds the team members accountable and the managers accountable for actually following through with their good intentions, because everyone has the best of intentions, to follow
Yes.
through.
Yes.
But it just gets so busy, and sometimes, this is the doctor's role, and the doctor will sit there and go, oh gosh, it's been 2 years since I've even sat down with Mary to talk with her about a great job she's doing, and it happens to us all the time where we're like, hey, patient, get in for your annual eye exam. And then we're like, hey, it's been 2 years since I've even had my eye exam, and you're there in the office every day. So though it's the best of intentions, it's really great to have that scheduled time to sit down with your team to really talk about, this is where we need you. This is what, this is areas we can work on. This is what you're doing really well. And just be able to have that feedback with your team is extremely vital, especially for a new, up and coming baby team in a cold start practice.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's so critical to point that out as well. Also, keep the team engaged, right? Because there's a couple of moving parts, and we're talking about development plans and quarterly reviews, right? It really serves. Think of it as being like mutually serving both of the stakeholders. The goal is that obviously it's going to serve the practice, help the team become better operationally, become more profitable. But it's also going to serve the team. I really like what you said about creating a development plan and providing incentive for the team such that it's not what was that term you used as far as, you're bound by the clock? Was
rewarding for time served. Rewarding for time served, like you're in prison.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, Kayla, in such a competitive employment market these days, it's difficult to get quality people. So perhaps it is high time to adopt some more progressive thinking regarding quarterly reviews, consistent development plans, and certainly from the perspective of the cold start, I think the most important thing that you touched on is to kind of have this as a foundational aspect of how you operate your business from quarter one, right? If you can start on that right foot. You mentioned a moment ago seeing people who are 5 years in, and then they're like, man, I wish if I could do it all over again, I would have started that way. So really great stuff on quarterly reviews. Okay, so we started with procedures manual, right? So number one, cold start doctors out there, organize that procedures manual, have those job descriptions laid out, construct it in such a way that it can be handed off. It could be a file that's emailed to an office manager, and they can take it from there, right? Something simply delegated, but understand you have to have that procedures manual before you can start to really effectively delegate in the practice. Number two, Kayla, you mentioned development plans and employee reviews. Absolutely love that, love that, love that. Okay, so next then, we're going to get into, again, talking about having the team on the same page with training. Where do you find because you work with hundreds of practices. Have you guys hit the 1,000 threshold? Y'all got to be getting close. I know
we're getting close.
Getting close. So excited. So excited. By the way, to those viewers, definitely, I know Kayla is going to be sharing how you can find her and learn more about Spexy. Go check out Spexy and all the incredible stuff they're doing. So, Kayla, that is a huge milestone. We're cheering for you guys.
We're close. Okay. Really close.
So that being said, in working with nearly 1,000 practices nationwide, what are some of the most common training needs that you believe if a cold start can grasp that from day one, it's going to set them up for success?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing is when you have, a new hire or in a cold start scenario, a whole new team, making sure that the foundational understanding of what makes opticals run is absolutely, steadfast and foundationally there is hugely important. We created one of our most popular courses is called the Spexy 101 course. And the idea is that we created it for new hires with the thought of there are so many things for a new hire to learn. I mean, the optical community is like learning a whole new language, right? And then on top of it, you have insurance billing and you have, all this medical side and this fashion side and, learning how to fit glasses. There's so many different dynamics. Well, what we came to find in my learning and my training and, my doing it wrong for years is that, there's so much to learn that even someone who, I consider myself, a good trainer, when I was in the offices and doing my trainings, I would always forget things. And I'm like, oh, I didn't tell you that. Mary, I swear I told you that. But, there was all these like little misses that I was doing. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to create a little manual on how to make sure I don't miss all these things, basically a checklist. Well, that checklist turned into, I'm going to create this course that I would go into offices and teach. And then it was like, well, offices don't need me there to teach this part. I can do it online. So that's where we created Spexy 101. And what's really interesting is the intent was for new people, for new hires who didn't know much about the optical world, right? Well, come to find out, because here I was teaching it this whole time to newbies, once we got it on the website and people were able to access it, the managers, the tenured opticians, would sit there with their new hire, kind of going over these videos, and they would go, "Oh my gosh, I never realized that. Huh, that's a good little trick," little things like that. And so
Sure.
we changed the verbiage of it from, a new hire training to more of a foundational training, because there is just so much to learn in the optical world, that having this one foundational thing that everything in your office is built on is extremely vital. And it's been very helpful. And we've had some, offices give us some feedback and cold starts, where I am so glad I had that, because this is stuff, from doctors specifically. This is stuff that they don't teach us. They teach us how to be doctors.
Sure. Yes,
They don't
absolutely.
necessarily, teach us on, how to train, the optician or the front desk on how to do this stuff. So, and what's happened that's really worked out very nicely, and we encourage this for all cold starts, being a new office. It is often tradition that you will, have your doctor, and then you will bring on a really great optician, and then you'll bring on a really great front desk person, and you'll bring on a really great biller, and you'll slowly start building your team. Well, one of the big mistakes that you wish you would have known from before, is when you start compartmentalizing these areas for your employees, that is all that they do. And in my opinion, and in my professional opinion, because I've seen the data from it, when you're able to empower that front desk person and that billing person and even the doctor on how parts of the optical run, you are going to have a much more fluid experience for your patient, and overall better knowledge for the rest of your team. Because I know we've all done it before, where we call, I don't know, somebody's office, and we're like, "Hey, can I get help with this?" They're like, "Yeah, let me put you on hold." "Oh yeah, that's somebody else. Let me put you on hold. Let me put you on." Like, that type of, broken
Absolutely.
experience
Absolutely.
is absolutely detrimental to a practice. And so we really have found that with having a consistent training, I mean, your front desk person doesn't need to know how to, position of wear measurements on a set of glasses, or how to adjust glasses. But your front desk person does need to know how to speak to a valuable anti-reflective treatment, or does need to know how to speak to the patient who's like, "Hey, these new progressives just don't work." "Oh, I'm sorry, Mary, that happens to a lot of people." No, they shouldn't say that. They should say, "Oh, you know what? Sometimes it is kind of difficult to get used to that distance intermediate reading, but you know what? We can take care of you. I'm going to have you sit down with one of our opticians. Let's get you scheduled." That's way more powerful, right? When they understand how progressives work. So, and that goes for everything in the optical. So we really have found that training, for that foundational training for the entire team, it's one of those things that you won't have to look back and say, "Gosh, I wish I would have done that in the beginning."
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I mean, in seeing, because in the work we do with established practices that are looking to become better, obviously,
Right.
realizing the need for fully cross-functional teams. And as a matter of fact, I would say
Right.
in the work we do, when practices are coming to us, established practices are coming to us, one of the number one needs they have is cross training need to be able to establish more of a cross functional team. So
Right.
absolutely, so vital that you point that out, and really building around and I like that term you use, the foundations, right? And what you guys are doing with Spexy 101, right? Being
Yeah.
foundations, and kind of that foundational understanding that we really should not take for granted, right?
Right.
So, Kayla, this has been really amazing. I mean, so I suppose to kind of pull it together again for our viewers out there, you've got this idea. You're somewhere along the stage of planning, developing, or perhaps getting close to launching your cold start. As it pertains to your team, we touched on the importance of the procedures manual, right? And really like that again, Kayla, that detailed, thorough understanding of exactly all of the different functions, descriptions, expectations, because
Yes.
we realize that it's not until we deliver the expectations that we can actually then hold people accountable and establish development plans. And that leads to that second
Right.
piece, which is the importance of employee reviews. Love your idea about quarterly reviews. Really great stuff. Keep everyone aligned, in line, aligned, and keep everyone engaged and motivated. And then that third piece, foundations and the importance of foundations in ensuring you do have a cross-functional team across the scope of the practice.
Yeah.
So hey, as we kind of wrap things up here, share with us, for those that want to connect with you, maybe talk a little about more of these topics and certainly learn about the amazing stuff that you guys are doing at Spexy. Why don't you give us a crash course, A, little bit of exactly what you guys are doing at Spexy, and then B, how folks can go ahead and reach you and learn more.
Yeah, well, you can certainly learn everything there is to know about Spexy on our website. And that is Spexy. It's Bespexy, bspexy.com. Our name is very unique, so you can actually just Google us and we'll pop up. But with Spexy is really great because we have 2 memberships. We keep everything really nice and simple. We have our membership, basically we call it the Spexy Plus membership, where your office, your entire team gets access to our entire learning platform for only $34 a month. It's pretty great. So your team can get in there and learn and access it wherever they are. A lot of cold starts, they want to start training up their team before they actually get into the office. So it's really great because your team can access the Spexy University platform from anywhere. What's awesome is we never have any sort of sign-up fees. We never have contracts. You stay around as long as you love us, but just so you know, we're going to work really hard to keep your love. And then the other membership that we have is what's called Spexy Plus Premium. And the biggest difference with Spexy Plus and Spexy Plus Premium, you get all of the same things in Premium that you do in Spexy Plus. However, you also get access to our frame turn platform. And this is turning out to be a really great tool for, kind of startups, that the whole cold start scenario, because a lot of times when it comes to your frame boards, it's a massive investment, right? And you want to be able to do the right thing and, have the right thing. You don't want to have something you invest in and have it not sell. So we've really beefed up our cold starts access into our frame turn platform, because frame turn typically works on your sales. Well, when you're a cold start, you haven't sold anything yet. So what's really great is with our cold start premium program is that the office then has access to basically our team to be able to say, hey, these brands have been working really well with other independent members that we have. Or we can say, an office can say, I'm looking into brands, I don't know, XYZ or whatever. Well, we can look at, hey, in your area, it usually retails really well around this. And some other independent members have done really well having this many on their board. So we can get a lot of really great information to these cold start practices that have, they don't know what's going to work yet because they haven't opened up their doors yet. So if we can give them some insights of what other practices are doing, it's becoming really, really valuable. So yeah, so that's basically what we've got at Spexy. We've got the Spexy University, and then we've got Frame Turn as well. So
that's amazing.
It's been really helpful.
That's amazing. Well, Kayla Ashlee, thank you again for joining us here on this episode of the Cold Start Corner, as we were taking a deep dive into how to align and train the Rockstar team for your cold start. So on behalf of our team here at Akrinos, I'm Eric Matei. Thank you for joining us here on the Cold Start Corner. And no matter where you are in that cold start journey, we are cheering for you. Keep it going. Hey, look, leave us some comments. Let us know how we can help. Follow us on the socials. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Visit the Cold Start Corner at Akrinos.com for updates. And you can connect with Kayla and her team at bspexy.com. All right, Kayla. Hey, thanks again so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Take care.